The rear subframe in the Skyline needs a little attention, particularly the diff bushes, so while it's all out, the whole thing is going to get a refresh. After a hit of penetrant, pretty much everything that holds the subframe into the car gets undone. The calipers are getting zip tied up out of the way so we don't have to bleed them, as the coilovers are currently staying in. The brakes will also be getting a full makeover at some other point. I strongly advise cracking your CV shafts loose before you drop everything out, that way you have something to hit it against. I destroyed the thread on one of mine trying to get it out of the hub when it was already out of the car, dug myself a deeper and deeper hole, which resulted in me having to buy a new set of aftermarket ones.
Oh, donkey.
There are a couple connections that sit above the diff that you need to undo. It's not the ideal place to try and film, but after that I had to drain and disconnect the Atteza system, which includes this banjo bolt and two of these hoses up behind the diff.
Ugh. Lovely.
Make sure you undo all the ground straps as well, and then you can go and undo all the other bolts holding the diff in.
What? Nope. Make sure you disconnect both handbrake cables, and absolutely under no circumstance should you sit underneath the diff while it's not supported.
After a good soaking of penetrant on all the bolts for the arms, the subframe can then get the same dismantle treatments as well. This is why breaking loose your axles first should be done on the car. There is more room to reach from underneath the diff side of the axle.
Woo!
It also helps with the weight of the car behind the hub side to try and separate it from the spline using the pound town method. So enjoy learning from my struggle.
Oh yeah! Oh, here comes the rain again. Oh yeah!
The next most fun part of this rebuild is removing the old bushes without a hydraulic press. Without a press, it means you have to remove the bushes in two pieces. The first being the inner metal sleeve. The drilling method sort of works, but it's also annoying. Once the inner sleeve is pushed out, there is also the outer sleeve, or the jacket that some call it. There are probably more delicate ways to do this, but ones that I don't have the time or the patience to do. But it got the job done. I'm also not too sure what happened to all those videos of this struggle, but I decided it was time to invest in some fire. This really picked up the pace on getting things done. I still have to cut the outer sleeves though, but it saves so much time just melting the inner ones out. All the arms got a quick clean up, as any oils on them can clog up the gun. They can then get hit in the sandblaster. The sandblaster sound, played at 5 times speed, also sounds like they're ready to start the Scotland the Brave. Once all the loose paint and rust spots were gone, it was time to recoat them. The paint of choice is an epoxy enamel. This one has been good to me over the years for fixing rust parts. This can go directly to the metal and has a pretty durable finish. All of the arms are going to go in silver, while anything that's brace or chassis related is getting a gloss black. And while it's drying, we can go back to playing with fire. This is how dead this bush is. I don't even need to drill it out. It's just gonna punch straight out. That was what was holding our diff in. With everything now having been stripped and painted, we can start to do it all in reverse. I'm using GK Tech subframe and diff bushes, and white line bushes for all the suspension arms. When installing the GK Tech subframe bushes, be mindful which bush you install at the top, as you can choose if you want to keep the factory roll center or improve it. The roll center is something that I am not smart enough to explain. These lower control arms ended up coming off again anyway, just to make life easier installing the new GK Tech ball joints, but that's in a later minute. I did have some clearance issues with the subframe studs while trying to do up the bolts, as the stud seems to go past our bush height. The website did say the GTR needed some spaces. I should have assumed it included the GTS4 as well, as they're pretty much the same car underneath. But once they were in, everything was cleared and we could get everything locked down. Subframe bushes on the stock bushes is meant to be 115 Newton meters. I can't find any torque specs for the GK Tech bushes, so we're just going to see what 115 feels like if we can hit it. Oh, that's feeling pretty tight. I don't want to snap that stud. So we got some brand new ball joints from GK Tech for our control arms. I have already had a look at one of these. The issue I am seeing is that the actual part that sits into the control arm is narrower or slightly more narrow than where the rubber actually seals the ball joint up. And the problem is I don't want to rip or tear this rubber trying to push it in, so I might have to undo this, take this off, put the ball joint in, and then put that rubber back on, just to be safe that we don't damage the seal around here. Down on here. Assuming my pliers open it up wide enough to get around that boot. So that's ready to go back on the car, thankfully. That is rear subframe well, it's not done, it's refreshed, new bushes on all the control arms, painted. It's up there, new diff mounts, which is what was giving me that sort of banging sound underneath anyway, so that's done. And I just got to sort of complete the rear end when more parts come in. So I've got some new axles, I've got the GK Tech Hikus Delete, then I can finally do the clutch. And then that'll mechanically be this thing done, I think.